Welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams-Birch, and this podcast, it exists for you. Whether you're a music lover, an educator, a choir member, each week we bring guests to the show to help explore what matters in music. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to the show. Hello, and welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emmy Birch, and today we have a special co-host, Erik Jacobs. I'm so excited for this episode. We tell you how it came and where it came, but you're going to want to get your notes. In this episode, we are sharing all the things that we are currently excited about using in our classroom to teach all sorts of fun stuff, but mostly to build culture and joy, and I just can't wait. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Perform International. They are making sure that this podcast is alive and well as our patrons over at patreon.com/musicedmatters. If you are looking for bonus episodes every month or a direct line looking for specific episodes and you want to be able to request those, just jump over to Patreon. There are a couple different tiers you can join, and I would love to have your support over there. But without further ado, let's hear all these really fun ideas with Erik Jacobs. Today on the Music Ed Matters podcast, we have a returning guest and a super special episode with my friend, Erik Jacobs. What's up?
What's up, baby? Woo! Pew, pew, pew.
So excited about this episode. Y'all, if you haven't met Erik before, pop back to episode 167. Not right now. Listen to this episode first. But pop back to episode 167 and we learn all about, what's your handle, the choir dude?
I'm the choir dude.
The choir dude. We learn all about the choir dude. And what makes Erik so special is like this energy and this excitement about life, but then also how it brings people together and builds these authentic relationships. And we just have had some really fun times chit-chatting at conferences. And where did this episode come from? Was it from Course America?
Yeah, we were at Course America and sitting down, and I had told you that one of your earlier solo episodes, you were sharing what you do for honor choirs, and I found it so helpful that you were just brain dumping all this really great information, and I literally sat there and wrote everything down meticulously. And we'd said it'd be a really cool idea if we tried to do something recurring where we're celebrating our colleagues that are doing amazing things and kind of shouting them out, maybe providing some links. And I was like, woo, let's do it.
I love it. And those solo episodes are the hardest thing on the planet. Like, I almost have to have a glass of wine before I do it because I'm like, who wants to listen to me talk for an hour? This is not what I want to do. So having you on here makes this so much more fun. All right, friends, we have an outline. And we are going to follow this outline because
yes.
I think if we didn't have an outline, the two of us would end up in like Saturn. And we probably would get there self-propelled by the energy of the two of us.
Yes.
Okay, so Erik, you go first. What is bringing you joy right now?
All right. So we talked a little bit about what brings me joy. Well, I am the Associate Artistic Director for a brand new youth choir called the South Loudon Youth Choir. And we're just coming off of an amazing 2 weeks of summer camp and about to launch our second season. And I was telling Emmy that one of the things that I love to do with my choir is help to build the culture. And so when I build culture, I think of things like, we're going to put them in teams and each team's going to have a banner and we're going to have Olympics every day. And then they're going to compete in musical challenges. And then we're going to have an award ceremony. And every day, whoever characterizes the SLYC core values the best gets the SLYC Stick.
Yeah.
And so I think Emmy's gonna put a picture on the show notes so you see what we're talking about, because to describe the SLYC Stick is not to give it justice. It is like a spirit stick, only better. It's got everything you might think a SLYC Stick has. It's bedazzled. It's got ribbons. It's got frou-frou-y ribbon. I don't know. Like, it's just very fun and outgoing and festive. And so that brings me a lot of joy when, first of all, I get to say SLYC Stick. And second of all, when I get to award it to kids who lose their mind when their team gets the SLYC Stick. So,
and do they get to hang on to it for that whole day of camp?
They get the whole day of camp to march it around and just show everybody else how great they are because they won the SLYC Stick. But what about you? What brings you joy, Emmy?
I'm so glad you're asking. So we still have, this episode comes out the first week of September, and I still have another week after that until school starts. And let me tell you, I am ready. I am ready to be in a classroom. I'm so excited. And I've been doing syllabi. And two things are sparking joy right now. SCAD has this really awesome onboarding process where they bring us onto campus 2 weeks. I did it last year because it was my first year at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. And they have this method by which our classes are 2 times a week for 2.5 hours for 10 weeks. And it's set up to look like the industry. And so that's a lot of time, 2.5 hours. And we know how to fill that time as rehearsalists, but how do you fill that time when you're lecturing? And so there's this formula where you teach a concept, you demo it, and you apply it. And you have to put all of this in every syllabi. So when I submit my syllabi, it's not just, here's what we're covering. No, it is a full-on detailed lesson plan for all 20 classes for the entire quarter. And so I've been going, Spark, lecture demo apply, transition, lecture demo apply, conclusion, wrap up. That's my little thing in my brain. And I'm like, it's such a great organizational tool. Oh, now sometimes some classes don't just have 2 humps. They have 3 or 4 where you don't just lecture demo apply. You lead demo apply. Anyway, my first day in music theory has an activity with rubber spots. And rubber spots are the bomb.
Oh my God, rubber spots.
Those little PE rubber spots. I just bought them on Amazon. Super easy. I use them for a million different things, like intervals. How many spots do you have to jump to make a second or a third? And those spots become half steps as students are learning the concept of major third, minor third, perfect, all that stuff. But then they work fabulous for building scales and qualities of chords. And just the idea of everyone clears the spots. And I mean, these are college kids. They haven't, it's an 8 o'clock class. They really don't want to be doing this, but it sticks. And at the end, they always love it. So you have to go stand on major thirds. This is a bunch of triads. Go stand on the major thirds. Okay, now stand on the minor thirds. And now find a partner and get together on a diminished third. That type of thing. Turn it into a 7th chord, manipulate the spots. But the whole first day is spots.
I love that. And I think in the spirit of what this podcast is, which is generating some ideas and showing people what brings us joy. I love this idea of rubber spots. It's not something I do. And I'll tell you what, I'm in the classroom with my 7th graders right now. They would eat up the rubber spots. That would be such a fun activity to get them to leap, to show for us. It might be whole step versus half step in a major scale versus a minor scale or something like that. So totally going to Amazon and getting me some rubber spots.
Fun. And then there's that fun concept of the creativity aspect of here's what I brought it for. Here's what I want you to learn. And then when you send them off to apply, how else can you use these rubber spots, or how else can you apply this idea of intervals or this idea of chord qualities? And they'll come back with a game rhythm hopscotch was not something that I ever did, but the students did it for one of their applies. We were doing rhythm flashcards and playing rhythm baseball. I sound like a child, but rhythm baseball where you have they ask if you want a first, a second, or a third. And so you pick a different color card and they have to play the rhythm correctly. And then they get to go to that base and we play rhythm baseball. And then they were supposed to go make up their own cards. And instead they made up rhythm hopscotch.
Oh, I mean, I'm trying to keep track in my head of just how many cool ideas you had just with rubber spots, right there. That must have been 4 or 5 different things you can use them for. So that's awesome. And I love that your older kids get into it. That's so cool.
I mean, think about it. It's 2.5 hours and they're taking a music theory class. And none of these students are music theory majors. None of these students are music majors. They are musical theater minors. They might be music composition minors. They might just want to learn how music works so they can write the theme song for the character they've made for the illustration comic that they're working on, or for the game they're animating, or the list goes on. So they're not taking music theory to be a music theorist. They're taking it solely for application.
That's awesome.
So it has to be kind of that perception. All right. So we've already kind of gotten into ideas, but that's because teaching sparks joy in us. So let's keep going with ideas. You want to talk about some TikTok trends?
Okay, yeah. So there's this big TikTok trend happening right now. And by the way, just so that everybody knows, the format of this is we're going to share some ideas, but then we're going to shout out some of our favorite people who are just inspiring us and who are doing amazing things in the classroom. Want to give them their due and show them our love, and then provide some links for you. So if you're coming back into the classroom and you need just something new to shake it up, these are some great ideas. One of them is this TikTok trend right now, the counting trend. Have you seen this?
Yes.
So you count to 8, typically with some kind of a beat, but it doesn't have to be a beat. And every time you subtract one number, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8. I could go on and on and on. We can like do a whole thing. But now there's like, that's the basic level of this TikTok trend. But then you've got goddesses like Maria Ellis out there, the Girl Conductor. You got to check her out if you haven't already, at Girl Conductor. And what Maria Ellis does is she takes it, she flips it on its head, she makes it solfege, and then she puts a little bit of a gospel back to it. And then she's got them singing the major scale, subtracting a note each time, ascending and descending. And there are videos of her online doing this, and just goes over so well. So I saw her do this, but I was blown away. I had to do it myself at my summer camp. And I got to tell you what, the kids ate it up. It was so fun. So kids love it when you show that you're on top of the trends and the things that are going on. So it can start simple with you. Find a beat on Spotify, play it, some kind of hip hop beat, and then have them do the counting game. And then you can layer it or scaffold it any way you want. So that's just one that I just absolutely love.
I love it. I used that exact same song to kick off a session for Florida Vocal Association that I did earlier this summer. And I went on, and I always use like backing tracks. So I'll look up like Soldier Boy instrumental. And it's like, boom, boom, boom. And the whole room's like, what? Is it about to break out into Soldier Boy? And it doesn't, because then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to Soldier Boy. But I think it's cool because you can put your own flair behind it. It doesn't have to be like, I like to play that music so my students know that I am an elder millennial. And that is an important thing for them to know in those first couple of days of class.
It's so funny you say that. I do very similar thing. I have like a name game that I play, and then it's always with Drop It Like It's Hot with Dre. Yeah. And just the instrumental track. But I like to think, oh, they're going to think I'm super cool because I know Dr. Dre. They don't know Dr. Dre.
No.
Because I'm old. And so I don't do it to show. I think that it just proves what an old man I am, basically.
I like it to establish respect your elders. So all that to say, pick music that sparks joy for you. So I know that Maria popped it on its head with solfege. I've also seen it on TikTok with some sweet harmonies added to it. There are some gorgeous examples of harmonizing it, and they're still going up the scales with different types of harmonization. I've also seen it with different scales, like Eastern versus Western scales. So the major scale versus the Indian raga that has like the raised and lowered different intervals. So there's a lot of really cool variations. And I think the key with any of these ideas is you're not just doing it to be fun. Like, you're hooking it into something you're doing it. So like when we did it for Florida Vocal, the first song we were doing for that reading session after the warm-up was super rhythmic. And it was in 4/4, and it made sense to do the counting song. And I think that's an important tie through.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something you're really good with, Emmy, is like the connecting the fun thing to the learning. I think that's like that's your jam. You're so good at it.
Thank you.
Giving you the props. All right. So the next couple are mine, but do you want to talk memorization race, since I just talked about TikTok trend?
No, I think we need to just keep shouting these people out, and then we'll come back to memorization race. Because I think Choir Olympics, I've been dying to hear details on this.
Okay. So I was talking to Emmy and bouncing some of these ideas off, and I was like, oh yeah, and we can talk about the Choir Olympics. You know about the Choir Olympics, right? Because the way that we're talking about it in Virginia, by BT dubs, I'm in Virginia, is like everybody's doing the Choir Olympics. But it's so strange how we can be so regional, and maybe you're not doing the Choir Olympics. So the Choir Olympics, I'm going to shout out Juliana Woodill and Luke Frels, which you know. Do you know Luke at all? I'm putting you on the spot, but Luke told me to tell you that he got all of his marathons in. I don't know.
Yes.
So
okay. Yes.
okay, yes.
Okay. Perfect.
So we got to make sure to connect you later. But anyway, Luke and Juliana are fantastic presenters. We know them regionally, but I want to shout them out because I would love to see some of their presentations go to bigger stages. And they're just such a great team. Their presentations focus on sight reading. I was lucky enough to be in a session with them where they spoke to everybody in my county. And one of the ideas for going back to school was the Choir Olympics. And essentially what it is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to divide your team up into different countries. So they get to pick a country and have a flag. And they're going to represent their country. Very topical because of the Summer Olympics. And you have them participate in group and individual events throughout the semester. And each event garners a certain number of points. So gold would be 3 points, silver would be 2 points, and bronze would be 1 point. An example of a game might be rhythm basketball or, something to that effect. Or, there's a ton of games and there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. But what Juliana and Luke did for us that I thought was fantastic is they actually created Canva slides that explains everything for you, breaks down the individual and group events, breaks down the point structure. What you're going to do is you're going to keep track in your room somewhere on a board of which class and what the flags are, so it can be involved. But the kids' buy-in is so good. I've seen this work at high school levels, seen it work at middle school levels. They're learning while they're playing a game, and it's just super fun. So that's one of the resources we're going to give you, are the Choir Olympics. It's just like such a great way to learn.
Yes, I'm so happy that there's going to be links and resources. When you look at the episode notes, we have the outline that we're following, and then anything that we've linked is hyperlinked in there for you for easy finding. So I'm not going to lie, I put Choir Olympics in my syllabus. I went back after we talked to my music appreciation class. This is the first quarter I've taught this class at SCAD. And I had a couple different days that I'm like, this is the moment to really throw, because I don't think I can manage the Olympics over all 10 weeks, but I can turn a single week into
the Olympics,
music Olympics. And I think it's the perfect time to kind of tie it all together. So I have a few ideas, but I'm excited to see the slide deck and see what's missing from my ideas.
Yes, I'm just putting a couple tweaks on it, and I'm so excited to share it with y'all, and it'll be ready to go on day one. You can grab it, make a copy, and then go.
So cool. Okay. We have to talk about Enola because I have heard nothing but amazing things. And there's a website, teachable.com, and this sounds amazing.
So Enola is another, like what I'm doing right now, and I'm so excited that you've given me an opportunity to do this, Emmy, is I'm showcasing the great work that our educators are doing in Virginia. Enola Douglas is a teacher in District 9, which is just a little south of where I'm at, still in Northern Virginia. And what Enola's passion is teaching other teachers. And she has a Teachers Pay Teachers account where she has a ton of stuff. Y'all go look her up. Her name is Choir with Enola. A lot of stuff ready to go, super affordable, but she just came out with something that blew my mind. On this platform called Teachable, she has created an entire 2-week, 6-hour, 6 professional development hour course that you can take to just improve your 2 weeks of school. She uses a story of like she works in a school that was a really like a difficult, challenging environment to work in. And she said that her first year there was really rough. It made her reflect on it. And she just really felt like establishing the culture the first 2 weeks of your class is going to set you up for success the entire year. I couldn't agree more. What you get with this is basically 2 weeks of plans ready to go, but you also get tutorials, videos. It's like a whole what's the Great Courses Plus on teaching.
Wow. That's
And
so
it's
cool.
and depending on how cool your district is, this is something you might be able to submit for professional development hours. So I'm so excited to share the link with that, and I hope people take her up on it, because everything I've used of Enola is fantastic. So it's really, really
That's
good
so
stuff.
awesome. And sometimes those extra little moments of help make such a big difference when you're already coming into the year, like having gone to all those meetings and you have all this other stuff and setting up your classroom, and it can just feel so overwhelming. I actually saw a really funny reel yesterday of like a type B teacher, and he was showing off his classroom as a type B teacher. And I think sometimes we in the music world feel like we have to all be type A. And really, dear friends, you are here to serve those singers in your space. And if
Mm.
you need to jump over to something like Enola, if you need to pop over to Canva and make a copy of something, beg, borrow, steal, and do whatever you got to do, the students come first. But so does your mental health. You should not be spending every ounce of your at-home time doing this. And we'll come back to that later. But I think things like this program from Enola Douglas is so exciting. Hey,
Yeah, it
before
was
we
awesome.
pop on to some other ideas, what is your number one tip for the first couple of weeks? I know what mine is.
Uh, I mean, I just really feel like that I agree with this. 2 weeks is you're setting the tone for the year. And so for me, it's just relationships. I teach middle school. In fact, I teach middle school boys. I've got um, over 500 kids in my choir program, over 5 choirs. I've just got a massive 7th and 8th grade changing voice, low voice program. So you got all these baseball bros and kids that come in, and they're like, they're not there to sing. They're there because their friends are there, or someone told them it was cool, or they know we put on this big show called Choir Palooza, but they're not there to sing or to learn. And so it's 2 weeks I've got 2 weeks to grab these kids, to convert them into choir kids, to make them really excited about what we're doing. I don't care why you came to my room, but I care that if you're in this room, you know what we're all about. So it's just all about establishing that culture and I call it making choir kids. Like, I make choir kids in 2
I
weeks.
love that. I love that you call it making choir kids. I feel like mine's condensed down into those first 2 days, really that first day that I see them. And I am, for whatever reason, really good at names. I don't know. It's like some random, I love to memorize all the kids at choir camp. Would be my job on day one to memorize all of their names. And at the end of day one, they couldn't leave until I said their name. And I would memorize all like 200 and some odd of them. I don't know why. I'm like, I have no tips. I cannot help. I don't know how I do it. But I will like meet every student as they come in. I get to class really early on those first, like I always get to class early, but I'm asking their name, getting some type of fact. As more people come in, I'm going around it, introducing them to everyone else as my way to practice. And then we always have some type of activity early on in the class after I've hooked them with whatever the hook is going to be.
Yeah.
And gotten them at the energy level that I want them to be at, because that's my job, is to bring them to the energy level I want them to be at. Then I always have something that gives them an opportunity to, why are you here? And speaking is such an important part of creative careers. And so many creatives feel anxiety when it comes to speaking. So I have the 1 minute speech, and I give them, they pair up with someone and they practice and they exchange the questions. And it's a question like, one thing we need to know about you that sets you apart from everyone else in the room. Why in the world did you sign up for this class? And what do you hope to walk out of this class with in 10 weeks? And you have to talk for the entire time the timer is set for. So if you don't put in all the details, you're like, and I also have a dog, and I've grown up in a swimming pool, and like they just start it's so fun, but it just kind of breaks the ice. Or another way to do it, if you don't do 1 minute speeches, is to put on one of those backing tracks and pass the name around the room with a beat. And it's so simple, but so real.
Yeah. I love that. I love your focus on names. I'm also a big names guy. I do so I do this thing where I call it a word association. So I'll memorize your name with the first letter of your name and something else. So Avery might be avocado Avery or something, right? And then I get to the end of the row, I remove the word association. I say, okay, here we go. Boom, boom, boom. And I go down the line. And then to make sure I memorize it, I call it whack-a-student. It's whack-a-mole. You know what whack-a-mole is? And I tell the kids that you have to try to time it so you randomly pop up, and when you pop up I have to say your name to like knock you down. And then
so cool.
And then we just keep going faster and faster until I got all your names. But another thing you said, I love this emphasis on trying to teach them to speak. Something that we do in the South Loudon Youth Chorale, which I really love, is, you know, sometimes you've got to build kids up to that minute, you know, or up to that time that they've got to fill space. And so what we'll do is we'll ask guiding questions in circles, and we'll say everybody has 30 seconds to talk. And if you have nothing to say after 5 seconds, there's going to be 25 seconds of silence. But that is your time and your space. And it's just about trying to like teach them that everybody's valued and everybody has space, because, you know, sometimes some kids come in and they want to take over a space because they love to talk. And so, or sometimes
I worked with acting majors. Like most of my students are acting majors. This is why there's a timer. But continue.
Right. But then sometimes you have the best intention. I think even as teachers, sometimes when you see a kid struggling, you want to step in and talk for them to eliminate the awkwardness. But sometimes we all got to sit in the awkwardness until a child understands this is your space and you can use it however you want. And if you don't want to talk, you don't have to. But slowly over time, what we found is they will fill the space, and then they'll fill a minute, and then they talk to each other. So I think anything like that, your first couple of weeks where you're getting them to talk to each other in non-threatening ways, you know, in middle school, I do a lot of this or that's because when we don't know each other, it can feel really weird to talk to each other. But if I literally just make you walk across the room, you know, apples or bananas, you know, and you have to walk across the room, then you're saying something about yourself without saying something about yourself, which can be super valuable. So
those breaking the ice things are so important. And also giving them the space. Like I let mine, like, you have 4 minutes to prepare for this. You're paired and shared, practice it with your neighbor. I've usually paired them on something intentional. Like I know they're majors or something, but if you need to make notes, make notes. If you are someone that has to have notes to talk for a minute, make your notes. And the cool part is I don't do tests. We do these application thingies. That's another story. But it's amazing to watch them progress over the quarter. And by the end, they might have had like 6 pages of notes for their first presentation, because they get points off if they read from their slide, and their slide has to be epic. And there's a whole like epic slideshow. We have this thing called SCAD Amped. Like there's a department on campus that teaches you how to be a TED talker.
Oh, wow.
And you go in there anyway. So anyway, epic slideshows, no reading, but to watch them go from like pages and pages and pages of notes to like a single index card. Like, that's growth.
Or the bullet points, you know, and you can just riff off the bullet points. That's so good.
Hey, speaking of that, let's talk about memorization races. Do your students like to memorize?
Like to memorize. Like is a strong word.
I feel like it falls in a couple categories. You have like those students who are like, after day 1, I memorized, I don't need my music. I'm like, really? Because you're a half-second delayed, so why don't we go ahead and get that music out again? But I feel like a lot of, especially the older kids or adults, don't want to let go of the music. And it's easy. An adult just doesn't want to feel unprepared. They will find time, if it's important to them, to memorize. But there's that awkward age, I feel, where they don't want to let go of the music, but they also aren't willing to put in the time to memorize it. So we have memorization races when I do any age choir. And basically I announce that it's coming, you need to be memorized, whatever. Everybody comes in and their folder gets placed, depending on the age, either around the room or on a chair someplace not where you are. And we come up and we sing, and when we hit a memory gap, there's a timer. I push go. Everyone races to their book to find that spot in the music, because that's also part of the like connecting the dots and problem solving. They find it, and then when they're ready, they come back, and it's a race to see which section gets back first. They get to prove that they have it right. Then the next section adds in, and then we rehearse it and do it again. So it kind of
Oh,
like
wow.
becomes this competitive thing of like which section. And if they rush back and didn't look at it, they all get sent back to their books again, while the next section gets the points for racing and actually learning.
My kiddos, Emmy, are going to be doing memorization races. This
I can't
sounds
wait.
super fun. That sounds
It's super
awesome.
fun. I hope you have fun. I hope it's not like, I mean, it's a little haywire, but I think we're haywire people. So it's okay.
Yeah. Well, and also just like we've got to keep it fresh. Something I'm actually struggling with, and I'm loving we're talking about this, is my week started last week. My kid's back. And I have my slides that I do every year, and they're the same. And I went into the room like, hey, I got this. I don't even have to look at this at this point. I've done it a million times. But it felt so stale. I just felt like, ugh. It's like a comedian that just like tours and does the same jokes. I need new material. And so, you might have a way that you memorize, but maybe this, doing something different and keeping it fresh, not just for your kids, but for you, keeps you in this job.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
so yeah, I love this memorization race. Sounds so fun.
Well, I'm so happy you like it. Tell me about relay races. Is that you or me? Is that me?
That might be you.
That's me. Okay, so so we have relay. I'm like, I feel like that's something I do, but I feel like that's something you would totally do too. We have relay races in my music theory and in my composition class, and so it will involve like I have a lined whiteboard and then a regular whiteboard, multicolor markers, and there's some type of like instruction. And so like the first person, maybe you have to build a C major seventh. And so they get the paper and they have to, write whatever notes are on it. And then they take it to the next person who has to build it on the staff. And then the next person has to build the inversion. And then the next person has to play it on the piano. So like there's different levels, and they want to see who can get to playing it on the piano first. That gets the points. Or in composition, we'll have like an idea, like a theme or a concept in comp, like a beginning and ending phrases or repetition phrases, or my favorite, the mashup. Do you know Britney Spears made all of her money off of creating a tune and then creating a secondary tune and mashing them up? And she did that on like every song. If you
I
don't
was not
believe me.
aware of this.
Okay, so oops, I did it again. I made you believe we're more than just friends, right? So that's your little like theme. And then she comes back later and she goes, oops, I did it again to your heart, got lost, and mashes the two up. She also did it in Hit Me Baby One More Time. And like every other song. So we sometimes play a race where one person creates a tune, the other person has to come in, create the counter melody. The third person might have to come in and like elongate it like a fugue and like flip it and reverse it. Let me see.
That is awesome. So I'm just curious, like for these relays, how much prep time or setup, or like what are you using? What materials are you using, or how are you doing this?
It's a good question. Usually they're on my lab, like the room I work in, is a huge, like around the outside edge is all computers, or my other classroom there's just like rows and rows and rows of computers. And I'm in the sound design department for these classes, and so they are just top notch. Every computer has a keyboard. Everybody has a bunch of different DAWs that they work with, digital audio workstations, and then they all have different notation programs. And so like those relay races for the building chords and stuff, that's usually early in the quarter when we're not yet as comfortable with our notation programs, where we're trying to get all on the same page. That race might come back later when you have to then put these chords, like when we're looking at chord progressions and popular chord progressions and, modal mixture and things, you would then have to put them in a DAW and then put them into a notation program. Like there's a lot of transferring just to build that intensity of, you don't have a lot of time in the creative world to do stuff. If you are composing for a film and you send something in, they want an edit like in an hour. You don't have weeks to work on something. So a lot of these games came about because after my first quarter, I realized that they just want to perfect and they work real slow, most of them. So these relay races became how fast can you throw out a 5-chord progression, throw in some modal mixture, put it in your DAW, translate it into a lead sheet and get it into the studio.
I love
That's kind of where it came from.
That's really cool. I love that. And what's cool is like your setup in your school is so unique. And so I feel like a lot of these lessons and these things you're doing have this almost overarching reach where I could see this in a choral classroom. I could see it in a secondary. I could see some of this at the elementary level. So whoever's listening, I mean, there's a little something for everybody in this. Speaking of which,
oh yeah.
Yeah, you got to lay this on them. Lay it on them.
We're talking about boom whackers.
We're talking about boom whackers.
God, I love boom whackers almost as much as I love rubber spots. Do you love boom whackers?
I love boom whackers. In fact,
I don't care how old you are. You love boom whackers.
Dirty secret.
Oh, do you have a set?
I don't have a set in my middle school classroom, and I really need to change that because here's my only holdback. Boom whackers will be used to assault other children in my middle school classroom.
Yes, in your current situation, that would be a thing. My favorite is when I bring them in, they have like their own bag, and I bring them in, and everyone's like, what's that? Because like I bring in ukulele or a guitar or like a big, huge floor piano from like childhood that still works. Thank you, Jesus. But like I bring in the boom whackers, and they're like, as they're coming, I'm like, please pick one. Please pick one. And then we will kick off class doing those musication YouTubes, and they are all in. They are all in. And it's great for identifying scales. It's great for like what chords did you remember playing? How many notes were in those chords? What scale sets are we using? Let's transpose it. Let's set up our boom whackers in the circle of fifths. Like it just becomes a tangible touch point, especially because I'm not working with a group of people who necessarily want to sing. I pretty much have like a chunk of actors who want to sing or talk or be on stage all the time. I have sound designers who want to make everything sound perfect, and they are fantastic. And then I have animators and illustrators and photographers and everybody else. Yeah. And so singing in that classroom is very interesting.
So I'm fascinated by this. I love this boom whacker thing, and something that you keep coming to that I actually, and this could be a whole other side conversation, so I don't want to bring us down that path, but I feel like so much of choral literacy in teaching in the chorus classroom, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I live in the middle school world. Maybe it's different in the high school world. I don't feel like we focus as much on chords, progressions, the way it sounds like you're doing it in your class. But I feel like that's a problem. Like,
they need to understand why is it going somewhere? I think that came about because I think I didn't understand the way it was taught to me. And once I started teaching it, like I can memorize Chopin so much better now because I'm looking at where's the chord progression going. And I think that would be true for a lot of our choir singers. Like, why is this particular chord hard to tune? And why? Oh, because it's a deceptive cadence, because it's modal mixture, because you've just borrowed from the Phrygian. Like, why is that? And why is this passage really tough? Because it's written in Locrian and the composer just got excited.
I love that. Another thing that I just, because I come from an instrumental background to choral music, and I'm not a functional pianist. Like I don't read piano music, but something that my friends have said they're impressed with me by is that I'll look at a score and I can very quickly analyze a chord and and I can hear the progression. Like I know where the progression's going. So I know that's a 4, that's a 5, that's a 2, whatever. And so I can very quickly kind of like make a very chunky accompaniment, but I don't need to read piano music to accompany my choirs. I just can look at a score and quickly do that with my chords. So I'm loving the boom whacker use. And I'm just thinking about transferring to a choral classroom and how we can take these and we can make a tonic triad, and we can take these and we can make the phrase model with the subdominant and the dominant, or even going back to your the floor rubber spot things, the rubber spots, and doing the same thing and almost like singing or hopscotching across a phrase,
So I mean, those rubber spots could represent beats, and you have to like glide over and then hop when you take the breath, or so cool. like there's so many things you can do with it. And I think the overarching thing here is getting it off the paper and teaching in a more traditional method still has to happen sometimes. There are still times where we just have to sit and get through a tough thing. Neapolitan twos. Just gonna leave that over there.
We're just gonna leave that over there. And
odd minute sixes. They just kind of hang out. Anyway, I think there are certain things that still need to be traditional, and everything we've talked about today could also be taught in a traditional model. But the singers in our spaces are coming to us in a TikTok world. And they are used to like that fast flick. I mean, even the little reel backing tracks are getting shorter. It used to be like pop music was shortening, because pop music used to only be 3 minutes because that's how much they could fit on that small little record. And then it got to where it was under 3 minutes because that's the normal attention span. And now songs are like barely over 2 and 2.5 minutes. And originally reels were all 30-second clips. And now you have that one that's like doink, 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 doink. It's not even a 5-second clip.
Yeah, that's wild to me. And also, I mean, we're living in a world where they're this all the time. And something that's happening in Virginia right now is we are going phone free in all schools. And what's happening, which is fascinating, is the phones are going away and the kids are like, entertain me. You're not entertaining me. They need to be entertained all the time. And although I don't 100% agree with it's my job to entertain you all the time.
It's not your job to entertain.
I agree with the kinesthetic. And I agree that if you are a 13-year-old adolescent, you've got to get your wiggles out. And I could sit there and I can teach you that that's a do, mi, so, and that's a tonic triad. Or I can get you on these like rubber spots and we can jump it and we can sing it and make that physical connection too. So yeah, all these are awesome. And I mean, this just goes down to like a use what you have thing. You know what I mean? Yes. Chairs for rhythm intervals, musical chairs with rhythm. You had a lot of really good chair ideas.
Because sometimes all you have is chairs. Because I do, there's no faculty parking at SCAD. And so I am lugging all this stuff from wherever I can find parking as well. And I love it because the students are center. Like everything revolves around students at the institution. And so sometimes I'm lugging too much stuff and I just didn't have any more hands. Those rubber spots are actually kind of heavy. I'm not lying. So sometimes you have to go with your chairs. Right. I do have quite a bit of them. So like chairs are really great for if you're looking at meter. Putting yourselves in groups of 3s or 4s or 5 or 2 and practicing the different durations and using the humans in the chairs. So if a chair represents a beat, how do you become a whole note? And the idea that when you become a half note, you're still taking up 2 beats, like that's a visual cue. Also, like we have every chair, if it doesn't have a desk, is rolly at SCAD. Every chair, if it's not connected to a desk, is rolly. Yes. This took me a second to be okay with. I now love it because the chairs also go up and down. So we'll line ourselves up in groups of 8. And if you are a whole step, you're up high. And if you're a half step, you're down low. So we literally turn our chairs into a piano so they can see what that looks like. Or we'll lay on the floor, and if you're a you're a white key, your legs are all the way out. If you're a black key, your knees are scooped in. And we like play piano on the floor. But you just use the space, use what you have, and use what you're needing to teach. We really struggled with rhythm a couple quarters ago. Last quarter's class did not struggle with rhythm. They really struggled with building the collections of notes that make the different scales. So we used boom whackers for that. We played relay races for that. We did dots for that. Like I have my collection of tools and then I just something to help them figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the creative brain, right? And all of us in the room have to figure out that thing and what works for us. But you know, the thing that I keep coming back to is these rubber spots, these boom whackers, these chairs, like
Choir, Olympics, all of the
choir.
things.
You have so many tools at your hand with just a rubber spot. You know, I mean, so remembering that is key for sure.
Absolutely. Sorry, my dog decided to get in on the conversation.
Who's
He's
your
like, "Are we
puppy?
talking
Oh
about
my
rubber spots? It's
gosh.
Boudreaux. Are we
Hey,
talking rubber
Boudreaux.
spots?" And you're excited. It's a perfect time to kind of wrap it up. I think we have all these exciting ideas, and obviously that's part of our personality, and you have to stay true to yourself. But I think Tucker Biddlecombe does a really great job. He does a session on how to endure the marathon that is being a teacher, and it's just choir. It's not, it's part of who you are. In some ways, it funds who you want to be as a human, but you have to balance life and remember that it's just choir. And it takes us right back to that beginning of what brings you joy.
Yeah. It's just choir has been something that's been on my mind a lot. And that's not to diminish what we do. I think that sometimes people hear us say something like that and they're like, well, what do you mean? It's just choir. And what I mean is like, in those moments where you're super stressed because, you know, you got a name wrong on a program and a kid is, or you're going through all the names and you're making sure everything's perfect and the font is perfect and everything is aligned, but there's a deadline to get it to print so that it's there and ready for your concert. It's just choir. Like at the end of the day, just you got to learn to let some stuff roll off your back. It's just choir.
It just has to go back to what brings you joy. And teaching in this kind of like fun, innovative way, there's still a syllabus for every class, and we still have topics that we cover. And they really do grasp these concepts by the end. And the student comments at the end of the quarter are always such a blast. My favorite's like, I never liked 8 a.m. classes until I met Dr. Birch. Like, yes,
oh my gosh, that's like, there
Such
you go.
win.
That is so college kids
Right?
saying that. Woo!
I know. I love them to pieces. But I think above all, you need to go back to what brings you joy. And if that is something you're struggling with, definitely find your people. Spend time, maybe not finding solutions, but just talking it out. And I think there's some really great books out there. This book is super cheesy, I'm about to recommend. It is so cheesy. But if you are in a spot where you are struggling with finding your joy, the book is called The Energy Bus. It is like reading a children's book. It requires no brain cells, but it is one of those books that just helps you reframe. And I have an episode coming out in a couple weeks with Lynn Brinkmeyer. Lynn Brinkmeyer is also a great resource for teachers that are looking to figure out what's next. And her thing that matters, I'm going to spoil it because it's so good. How are you thinking today? Are you thinking in a way that is constraining and really putting yourself in, and can you reframe that to make it to where it's expansive? So are you thinking in ways that are expansive, and are you doing things that spark you joy? And hopefully some of these fun little links and choir Olympics and SLYC Sticks can bring you joy.
Yeah, I love the tie-in, and I just think that, like, as important as it is to think about all these things as we all go back to school, it's equally important to remember it's just choir. It's going to be fine. Go in there and build relationships with these kids. Show them that you care about them. Get them hook, line, and sinker. Throw a couple boom whackers in there, and you're going to be all good.
Rubber spots. Well, normally at this point I say goodbye to the guest, but you're my co-host, so we have to do the send-off. We always say, thank you so much for listening. You have your homework. Go check out the program notes. Click on the links. I always ask you what you thought, but then we have to say the lines. We all know that music matters, especially what we're doing today, but it starts with you matter. Don't forget, that's the most important thing. So first, you matter. We all know that music ed matters, especially all the fun little games we play. And what do we say at the end? We see you next time on the Music Ed Matters podcast.
Everything she just said, I totally agree.